He was a business tycoon who had it all: power, luxury, and wealth. But one day, he lost something incredibly vital, something that could have unraveled everything he built. And the person who found it? A struggling female laborer, with no idea who he really was. Why would someone with so little return something so priceless? And how did that simple act shift the course of both their lives forever? Settle in, as we unravel the story of how a powerful business magnate fell in love with a humble woman who unknowingly became his savior. In the bustling heart of Port Harcourt, Rivers State, Nigeria, lived a young woman named Sandra. At just 24 years old, she bore the weary gaze of someone life had tested too early. Each dawn, long before the streets buzzed with activity, she would wrap a faded scarf around her coarse hair, slip on her cracked rubber boots, and trudge off toward a dusty construction yard not far from her rented shack. Sandra wasn't just another worker. She lifted heavy blocks onto her head, mixed concrete with a rusted shovel, and pushed overloaded wheelbarrows under the punishing sun, never uttering a single complaint. Life had dealt her a tough hand. When she was merely 12, tragedy struck. Her parents died in a ghastly road accident while returning from their hometown. No family came forward. No neighbor offered a hand. She was left alone to care for her two younger siblings, David, just 8, and Irene, who had only recently turned 6. From that moment, Sandra stepped into roles no child should bear: mother, guardian, protector, and provider. She began by selling pastries along the roadside. Later, she took up laundry jobs. When even that wasn't enough, she approached a bricklayer and pleaded to learn how to work at construction sites. That was how her journey with manual labor began. It was brutal, but it paid. No matter how exhausted she felt, she never grumbled. Sometimes, with trembling hands and sore shoulders, she'd pause, sit on a steel beam high above ground, stare into the open sky, and softly say, "One day, something good will find me." Little did she know, her moment was closer than she ever imagined. In another part of the city lived a man named Ezekiel Johnson. He was a 30-year-old billionaire, tall, reserved, and deeply private. His face graced magazine covers. His companies dotted 2 continents, one thriving in Nigeria, the other booming in the United Kingdom. People spoke of his fortune in hushed admiration. Yet, behind all the acclaim, Ezekiel was different. He disliked loud places. He avoided the spotlight when he could. Clubs, parties, and fake smiles weren't his thing. Born into wealth, Ezekiel was raised by a gentle mother who always reminded him, treat everyone with dignity, even those who have nothing. True riches lie in how you value people. And he listened. Still, even with his empire, high-end cars, and a mansion overlooking the Atlantic, there was a void. Ezekiel hadn't found love, true love. He met women, stunning, affluent, and well-spoken. But they often wore masks. Their affections felt rehearsed, motivated by status and wealth. None of them saw him, only what he owned. "I don't need a woman who adores my bank account," he once confided to his driver. "I want someone real, someone who knows struggle, someone who sees me." What Ezekiel didn't know was that the woman he longed for wasn't in an exclusive club or high-end restaurant. She was closer than he could imagine. And fate had already begun crafting the bridge between their two worlds. After over a decade of living and building his brand overseas, Ezekiel returned to Nigeria not to make a scene, but for a quiet retreat. He craved simplicity. A couple of months away from meetings and boardrooms, a chance to breathe and revisit some properties he hadn't seen in years. On a breezy morning, Ezekiel awoke feeling unusually refreshed. He decided to do something casual, shop for a few essentials and visit one of his land sites nearby. No entourage. No luxury suits. Just a plain olive t-shirt, blue jeans, and a baseball cap pulled low. He slid behind the wheel of a modest black SUV and whispered to himself, "Today, I just want peace." He drove to a local supermarket tucked away on the quieter side of town. Inside, he picked up biscuits, bottled water, toothpaste, and other small items. He smiled at the cashier, paid in cash, and gently tucked his sleek black wallet into his back pocket. But fate had other plans. As he stepped out of the store and headed to his car, the wallet slipped out and hit the pavement without a sound. He didn't feel it. He didn't notice. That wallet contained everything: his UK driver's license, 2 international credit cards, a Nigerian ID, business cards, and over $2,000 in crisp notes. He started the engine with a sense of calm, completely unaware of what he had just lost, and of the woman who was about to find it. He unscrewed a bottle of water, took slow, thoughtful sips, and leaned back into his seat, never realizing what had just slipped from his grasp. His day was about to take a sharp turn. That same morning, Sandra was on her usual route to the construction site. But her stomach was grumbling louder than usual, so she decided to stop by a nearby shop to buy a soft drink and a snack. She reached into her bag and counted the few cedis she had, twice, just to be sure it would cover the cost. After paying for her items, she quietly stepped out of the store. But something unusual caught her attention near the edge of the parking lot. A black wallet. She paused. Her eyes scanned the area. Nobody seemed to be searching for anything. She walked closer, bent down slowly, and picked it up. It was heavier than expected. Curiosity got the better of her. She opened it, and her eyes widened. Foreign currency, official-looking documents, and several professional business cards were neatly tucked inside. Who forgot this kind of wallet here?" she murmured. She took a few cautious steps back and examined the contents more carefully. One of the cards had a name and phone number, but the digits carried an international dialing code, no local Nigerian number, no WhatsApp contact. She tried to call the foreign number, but the call wouldn't go through. Sandra looked around again. Still, no one appeared to be missing a wallet. She could have kept walking. No one would know. But something deep within her resisted the thought. Her conscience wouldn't let her walk away. So, she turned back and re-entered the supermarket. Walking up to the cashier, she said politely, "Excuse me, I found this wallet just outside, near the parking area. I believe someone dropped it." The cashier looked stunned. "Wait, you found a wallet like this?" Sandra nodded. "Yes. Please give it to your security team. When the owner comes, kindly return it to him." The cashier stared at her, clearly impressed. "You're honestly a good person. Thank you." Sandra gave a modest smile, handed the wallet over, and quietly exited the store. Meanwhile, just down the road, Ezekiel had pulled into a small fuel station. As he stepped out, an attendant approached him with a cheerful "Good morning, boss. Full tank?" "Yes, please," Ezekiel replied. "Card or cash?" the attendant asked. "Debit card," Ezekiel responded. "Alright, kindly pay before I start pumping." "The network sometimes misbehaves," the attendant said with a grin. "No problem," Ezekiel replied. But when he reached into his back pocket, the pocket he always kept his wallet in, his fingers touched nothing. He frowned slightly, then quickly checked the other pocket. Still empty. Now alert, he opened the driver's door and searched the front seat, underneath the dashboard, and between the cushions. Still nothing. He moved to the back seat and rummaged through his briefcase, files, and backpack. Still nothing. His heartbeat quickened. "My wallet," he whispered, his face turning pale. "Where is my wallet?" Looking at the pump attendant, he said, "Please, give me a minute." Without waiting for a reply, Ezekiel jumped back into the vehicle and sped off, heading straight back toward the supermarket. "Please, God," he muttered, "let it still be there. Let someone kind have found it." That wallet held critical documents, his international driver's license, identification cards, corporate business cards, and a substantial amount of cash. Just a few minutes later, Ezekiel pulled into the supermarket's lot and stepped out quickly, almost jogging inside. He walked straight to the cashier and asked, "Excuse me. I was here about an hour ago. I think I dropped my wallet. Has anyone by chance seen it?" The cashier looked up and studied his face. "Are you the gentleman who bought snacks earlier?" "Yes, that's me," he replied, trying to stay composed. She nodded. "A young woman found the wallet outside just after you left. She turned it into our head of security." Ezekiel's shoulders dropped in visible relief. "Thank God. Please, can I speak with him?" "Of course," she said and stepped away to make the call. Moments later, a tall man in a navy uniform with a name badge that read, "Mr. Maxwell," approached. "Good afternoon, sir," he greeted. "Good afternoon," Ezekiel replied. "I misplaced my wallet earlier today. I was here buying a few things, and the cashier said someone found one and handed it to you." The man gave a polite nod. "Yes, sir. A young lady returned the wallet not too long ago. But I'll need some sort of identification to confirm it's yours." "Yes, absolutely," Ezekiel said quickly. "My name is Ezekiel Johnson. You'll find business cards with that name inside. You'll also find a passport-sized photo," Ezekiel added. The security officer, Mr. Maxwell, opened a drawer beside the counter and pulled out the black wallet. He flipped it open, checking through the cards and documents until he found the photograph and name card. "You're right," he said, nodding as he looked back at Ezekiel. "This definitely belongs to you." He handed the wallet over. Ezekiel took it gently and opened it, inspecting one compartment at a time. His breath caught slightly. It was all there. The cash, the identity cards, the foreign documents. Every single item was untouched. He closed the wallet slowly, holding it tightly in his hand, then turned to the cashier and Mr. Maxwell. "Where is the young woman who brought this in?" "The one who found it." The cashier gave a small smile. "She didn't say much. She just came in to buy a drink and a snack. She found the wallet outside and brought it straight to me. She didn't leave any contact number." "No, sir," the cashier replied. "She didn't even wait for anyone to thank her." Ezekiel paused, a mix of admiration and regret settling on his face. He then asked for a piece of paper and a pen. Carefully, he wrote down his mobile number, folded the slip, and handed it to the cashier. "Please," he said sincerely, "if she ever stops by again, give this to her. Tell her I would very much like to speak with her." "I'll do that, sir," the cashier replied respectfully. Ezekiel then reached into his now-recovered wallet, brought out some Ghana cedis, and handed a few notes to both the cashier and the security officer. "Thank you," he said with genuine warmth. Not just for holding onto the wallet, but for being part of something good and honest. Both of them beamed, visibly touched by his gratitude. As Ezekiel walked back toward his SUV, he glanced around the vicinity, his eyes searching for the woman who had done something so rare and selfless. But she was long gone. Still, a quiet voice in his heart assured him this wouldn't be the last time he saw her. That night, Ezekiel lay wide awake in his sprawling bedroom. Though the room was dark and quiet, his thoughts were loud and restless. He shifted from one side of the bed to the other, unable to sleep. His mind kept circling back to the moment the cashier mentioned the woman, her kindness, her humility. She saw all that money, he thought, and she didn't take a single thing. He placed a hand on his chest and whispered to the ceiling, "There are still good people left in this world." He sat up, exhaling deeply. "I don't even know her name," he said to the quiet room. "I wish she had left her number. I wish I could thank her properly. I really hope she comes back." He stared into the darkness for a while longer and murmured, "People like her are rare. Truly rare." 3 weeks later, Sandra returned to the same supermarket. After weeks of saving bit by bit, she finally had enough money to stock up on some groceries for herself and her younger siblings, David and Irene. Tired but focused, she pushed a shopping basket through the entrance, unaware that someone behind the counter had recognized her. "Excuse me, madam," the cashier called out. Sandra didn't respond, lost in thought. "Madam, please wait." Still, she didn't turn. A woman nearby tapped her gently on the arm and said, "Hi, the cashier is trying to get your attention." Sandra turned slowly, a bit confused. The cashier walked over with a warm smile. "Good afternoon, Ma. Sorry to disturb you," she said kindly. "But someone left something for you." She reached into her apron and pulled out a neatly folded slip of paper, then handed it to Sandra. Sandra blinked, puzzled. "Who gave you this?" "The man whose wallet you found a few weeks ago," the cashier replied, still smiling. "He asked me to give it to you if you ever returned." Sandra froze, staring at the paper. Her fingers tensed slightly as she took it. She hadn't expected this. Not after 3 full weeks had passed. In fact, she had almost forgotten about the incident entirely. "Oh, thank you," she said quietly. "He really wanted to thank you himself," the cashier added. "He seemed quite serious about it." Sandra nodded faintly. She slipped the note into her hand and resumed her shopping, but her mind was no longer in the store. Her thoughts danced around the paper, the number written on it, and what it might mean. On her way home, she carefully placed the note inside one of the shopping bags. Later that evening, after they returned to their modest apartment, her younger sister, Irene, helped unpack the groceries. As she cleaned and arranged the items in the kitchen, she gathered the empty packaging and newspaper bags Sandra had returned with, and unknowingly threw them into the trash bin outside. Inside one of those crumpled bags was the folded piece of paper, the phone number Ezekiel had left for her. She had no idea what she had just disposed of. By the time Sandra remembered the paper, it was already too late. The next morning, she woke up feeling lighter than usual, something inside her felt at peace. Her mind drifted back to the note the supermarket cashier had given her, the one that carried Ezekiel's phone number. She smiled faintly to herself. "Today, I'll call him," she whispered. Later that afternoon, after finishing her chores and preparing to make the call, Sandra reached into her handbag to retrieve the slip of paper. But then she paused. A sudden realization struck her. She hadn't placed it inside her purse. She had tucked it into one of the grocery bags she brought back from the supermarket. Her eyes widened. She called out urgently, "Irene." Her younger sister's voice responded from outside. Moments later, Akua stepped inside. Sandra turned to her quickly. "Please check the shopping bags I came home with yesterday. There's a small folded paper in one of them. I need it." Akua hesitated. "Is it really important?" "Yes," Oma replied. "Why?" Irene looked down, guilt creeping onto her face. "Because I already threw those bags away yesterday." Sandra's eyes flew open in panic. "Oh no." Without a second thought, she dashed out of the house, barefoot, across the dusty road and straight to the large green waste container on the street corner. She didn't care who was watching. When she reached the bin, she yanked open the lid, only to find it completely empty. The waste collectors had already come and gone. Sandra stood still. Her breath caught in her chest. Her arms fell limply by her side. Her knees weakened, and she slowly sank to the curb beside the bin, staring blankly at the ground. "God, why now?" she whispered. "How could this happen?" Tears slipped down her cheeks, quietly, steadily. The sting of regret felt almost too heavy to carry. But after a few minutes, she wiped her face with the edge of her dress, exhaled deeply, and muttered, "If it's meant to be, it will find its way." She considered going back to the supermarket to ask the cashier for the number again. But just as she turned to go, she stopped. She didn't want to seem desperate. So, she took a deep breath and walked slowly home, holding onto a quiet thread of hope in her heart. 2 weeks passed. Life continued as usual. Sandra returned to her daily hustle at the construction site, waking before sunrise, walking under the scorching sun, and returning late in the evening. Then, on a bright Saturday morning, her neighbor came knocking. "Sandra," the woman called, "there's a community outreach happening at the district office. They are giving out free food, school supplies, and drinks. It's from a large real estate group. You should go with the kids." "I'm heading there too." Sandra nodded. "All right, let's go." When they arrived at the venue, it was already bustling with people. But the atmosphere was calm and well organized. Locals stood in orderly lines while volunteers handed out bags of rice, tomato paste, soft drinks, and water. Sandra received a modest food pack and some canned tomatoes. As she turned to leave, something caught her attention by the refreshments table. A familiar face. She looked again, and yes, it was the cashier from the supermarket. The woman looked up, squinted for a moment, and then her face lit up with recognition. "Oh, it's you, the lady who returned the wallet, right?" Sandra smiled, surprised and a little shy. "Yes, that was me, but I lost the phone number you gave me." The cashier's smile widened. She leaned closer and whispered excitedly, "He's here. The man whose wallet you found. He's the one sponsoring this outreach." Sandra's heart skipped a beat. She stood frozen, her eyes scanning the crowd. Could this be it, the moment she thought was lost forever? The cashier looked around briefly, then nodded toward a sleek black SUV parked quietly at the edge of the field. "That's him," she said. "He's sitting inside that car. Wait, let me go and tell him you're here." Sandra's eyes widened in alarm. She reached out quickly and said, "No, please, there's no need for that. I didn't come here for him. but the cashier was already walking away with a gleeful smile. Sandra stood still. Her heart raced. Her palms were suddenly damp. Seconds later, she saw the cashier walk up to the vehicle, lean in, and speak to the man inside, pointing directly at Sandra. Then the car door opened. Ezekiel stepped out. He looked in her direction. Their eyes met. He began to walk toward her slowly, and as he reached her, he gave a gentle, reassuring smile. "I finally get to meet you," he said warmly. Omar smiled nervously and replied, "Good afternoon, sir. What's your name?" Ezekiel asked, his tone soft and curious. "My name is Sandra," she replied, her voice low but steady. Ezekiel nodded, his lips curling into a gentle smile as he shook his head slowly. "You can't imagine how long I've been trying to trace you," he said softly. Sandra looked down, her fingers nervously tracing the hem of her dress. "I lost the paper the cashier gave me. I tucked it inside a grocery bag, and unfortunately, my younger ones threw it away." Ezekiel's smile didn't fade. "It's okay. Maybe today wasn't an accident. Perhaps fate meant for us to reconnect right here." He gave her a warm look. "How did you even hear about this outreach?" "A neighbor mentioned it," Sandra replied quietly. "So I thought I'd stop by." "Well, I'm glad you did." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone, holding it toward her. "Please, can you type in your number for me?" Sandra took the phone delicately and entered her digits, then handed it back. Ezekiel immediately gave her a missed call so she'd be able to save his contact. "When you get home, please call me," Ezekiel said kindly. Sandra's face lit up. "All right, sir," she responded, her voice brimming with gratitude. Before he turned away, Ezekiel opened the door of his sleek black vehicle and reached inside, retrieving a small brown envelope. He passed it to her with a quiet smile. "Just a little something to support your pantry. Buy what you need." Sandra's eyes welled up with emotion. She pressed the envelope gently against her chest. "Thank you, sir. May blessings follow you," she whispered. Ezekiel nodded, his face full of peace, then walked back to where the organizers were gathered. Sandra turned and headed toward the dusty roadside. At the bus stop, she waited patiently until a small cream-colored minibus labeled arrived. She boarded quickly, finding a narrow spot near the back, the scent of engine oil and market goods hanging in the air. She squeezed into the space, balancing her handbag and the food package she had received. A few minutes later, the bus neared her neighborhood stop. Sandra leaned forward to dig into her bag for change. As she did, her phone, which she had placed on her lap while reaching beneath for money, slid quietly aside. She grabbed the money and handed it to the driver, who barked, "Madam, quick. I have other passengers." Hurriedly, she picked up her bag and the food items, then stepped down from the bus as it rolled away into the traffic. But she didn't realize she had left her phone behind. The phone rolled off the seat and onto the floor of the moving bus, silent and unseen. At home, Sandra sat down and reached into her bag, eager to call Ezekiel and say thank you once more. But as she rummaged through, a sudden stillness came over her. The phone was gone. She froze. The memory returned, the phone on her lap and how she stood up quickly. Her shoulders slumped. She slowly sat on the bare floor of the small room, her breathing heavy, her heart weighed with disappointment. Her eyes burned, but she didn't cry. She whispered, "God, I trust you. Even now." That night, Ezekiel sat in his stylish apartment in Lagos. A quiet excitement filled his chest. He smiled as he replayed the moment he saw Oma again, the innocence in her smile, the softness of her voice, and the humility in her presence. Longing to hear her voice once more, he picked up his phone and dialed the number she had entered. But the call didn't go through. "This line is currently switched off," the automated voice said. He frowned slightly. He redialed. Same result. "Maybe her battery died," he murmured, trying to push down the worry rising in his chest. He waited a while and tried again. Still nothing. Ezekiel leaned back, now visibly unsettled. "Why is her phone still off?" he asked the air around him. By the next morning, unable to shake the unease, he got dressed and drove to the same supermarket where their story had quietly begun. He walked straight to the checkout counter. "Good morning," he greeted warmly. The young woman behind the counter looked up and smiled. "Good morning, sir." "Please," Ezekiel began, "do you happen to know where that kind lady, Sandra, the one who returned my wallet, lives?" The cashier paused and then shook her head. "I'm sorry, sir. She never said. She just shopped and left." Ezekiel's shoulders sank slightly. He nodded, forcing a smile. "All right. Thank you very much." As Ezekiel walked back toward his vehicle, his thoughts raced with confusion and unease. Did she block me? Could something terrible have happened to her? He couldn't tell for sure. Settling into the driver's seat, he remained still for a while, his eyes blankly fixed on the road ahead through the windshield. Eventually, he turned the key in the ignition and headed back home. 2 days later, in an effort to clear his mind and perhaps distract himself, Ezekiel decided to visit one of his extended relatives. He believed a change of environment might help. As he cruised down a quiet, deserted lane on the outskirts of Port Harcourt, something unusual caught his attention. Seated next to a small wooden kiosk was an elderly woman, her head gently resting against a dusty cement wall. Her legs were stretched before her, and a few ripe bananas were neatly arranged on the rickety table beside her. From afar, Nathaniel squinted at her face. She seemed oddly familiar. He instinctively slowed the car, drawing nearer, his gaze fixated on her weary face. A wave of recognition hit him square in the chest. He narrowed his eyes, heart pounding. "That's her," he murmured under his breath. He veered the car to the side of the road, cut off the engine, and stepped out cautiously. As he approached, his footsteps slowed. His heart thudded. He knew this woman. Drawing closer, he spoke softly, "Mama Sarah." Startled, the old woman started awake. She looked up at him with fearful, unsure eyes. She didn't recognize him. Who are you?" she asked faintly, her voice nearly a whisper. Ezekiel offered a warm, nostalgic smile. "It's me, Ezekiel, son of Mr. Johnson, husband of Anita." Her eyes widened. She blinked hard and peered closer, searching his features like scanning a ghost from the past. Then her hands flew to her mouth in disbelief. "Johnson's boy," she gasped. "And your mother? Is she Anita?" He nodded gently. "Yes, ma'am." A small sob escaped her lips, and she flung her frail arms around him. "My child. Look how grown you are. I used to carry you on my back. I worked for your parents for so many years. Oh, God is indeed merciful." Ezekiel chuckled softly and held her palms. "Mama Sarah, why are you here? Why are you sleeping outside like this?" The old woman's smile faded. She looked away slowly. My son, it's a very long story. Ezekiel didn't press her for answers. He simply took her by the arm, firm yet gentle. Come. Let me take you home. She didn't hesitate. Quietly, she followed. He helped her into the car, buckled her in carefully, and drove her straight to his house in Port Harcourt. Once there, he gave her a room with fresh bedding, clean clothes, and a warm meal. The following morning, Ezekiel entered her room with a bright smile. "Good morning, Mama Sarah." She sat up slowly, and tears welled up in her eyes as she responded, "Good morning, my son." Seeing her cry, Ezekiel rushed to her side and wiped her tears with a handkerchief. But her voice trembled as she spoke. "My child, may the heavens bless you. You don't know what you've done for me. You've pulled me out of disgrace and desperation." Her words pierced Ezekiel's heart. He placed his hand gently on hers and said, "You will never suffer again. Not while I live." And he meant every word. Later that morning, he led Mama Sarah to the living room, where he served her a cup of hot tea. He then sat across from her and asked softly, "Mama, what happened? Why were you by the roadside? Please tell me everything." She exhaled deeply, her gaze lost in a faraway memory. "My son," she began slowly. "When your father and mother moved abroad to the United States, they gave me some money to support myself. I was overjoyed. I used it wisely to open a small shop in the local market. I even rented a humble apartment nearby." Ezekiel listened quietly, nodding in empathy. "At first, everything went well," she continued. "I sold food items, and business moved steadily. But over time, the economy worsened. Prices of food increased, and people began buying less. Goods spoiled before I could sell them. Some days, I would sit in my store from morning till night and barely sell anything." Her voice wavered. "One day, my landlord demanded rent. I pleaded with him to be patient, but he wouldn't listen. A few weeks later, he returned with 2 strong men and threw my belongings out." Just like that. Ezekiel's eyes widened. "He did what?" "Yes, my son," she said quietly. "I had no choice. I gathered what little I had and moved into my shop. That became my only shelter. I slept on the floor every night." She paused, her hands trembling. "Then one night, around midnight, while I was sleeping inside the shop, 5 masked men broke in. They kicked the door open violently. I tried to scream, but one of them pointed a gun at me. They stole everything, my phone, my earnings for the entire month, and my most valuable items." Ezekiel clenched his fist but said nothing. Mama Sarah looked down, her voice just above a whisper. "Since then, I've had nothing. I ended up by the roadside, with only bananas to sell. That was all I could afford." Ezekiel leaned forward on the couch, both hands tightly clasped, his face drawn in concern. The elderly woman sitting across from him continued her story, her voice brittle. "Just a month after that robbery," she said, "the owner of the shop came by. He said, 'If you can't pay the rent, pack your things and go.' I wept, I begged him, but he locked the shop and sent me away like a stray." Tears slowly welled in Ezekiel's eyes. He covered his mouth with one hand, turning his face to the side, fighting to stay composed. "Mama," he whispered hoarsely. "All of this happened to you?" The old woman nodded slowly. Her lips quivered as she held back more emotion. The pain in Ezekiel's chest tightened. His heart felt crushed. He couldn't speak. He couldn't even move. All he could do was sit in silence, staring into nothing. After their heavy conversation, Ezekiel quietly stepped into his study. He sat for a long moment, allowing everything to sink in. Then, with a deep breath, he picked up his phone and made a call. "Good morning, sir," the man on the other end answered. "Good morning, Isaac," Ezekiel replied calmly. "I have an important project for you." "I'm listening, sir," the engineer responded. "I want you to begin building a 4-bedroom house," Ezekiel said firmly. "Nothing extravagant. Just simple, well-built, and solid. It must be completed within 2 months." 2 months? Isaac echoed, surprised. "Yes," Ezekiel confirmed. "It's for someone very dear to me. She'll move in as soon as it's ready." There was a pause, then Isaac replied, "Understood, sir. I'll get started immediately." True to his word, construction began the following week. Brick by brick, the house began to rise in a quiet corner near Garrison, a serene and peaceful suburb just on the edge of town. Weeks rolled by. One sunny afternoon, Ezekiel decided to inspect the progress for himself. He arrived in his black SUV, stepped out with measured steps, and gazed at the rising structure. The roof hadn't yet been fixed, but the framework was already impressive, tall and steady. As Ezekiel walked around the site, something caught his attention. A young woman trudged past him, balancing a heavy cement block on her head. Her clothes were soaked in sweat and dust, an old, faded t-shirt clung to her back, and a scarf was loosely tied around her hair. He was about to look away when he paused. Her face, something about it pulled at his memory. Ezekiel squinted, his breath catching. Could it be? He took a cautious step forward. The young woman drew closer, carrying the weight with quiet endurance. Sweat streamed down her temples. Her fingers were caked with cement. Then softly, Ezekiel called out, "Sandra." The woman froze mid-step. Slowly, she turned around, her eyes locking with his. "Sir," she breathed, almost inaudible. "You again." They stood still for a moment, stunned by the unexpected reunion. Neither of them spoke. The air around them grew thick with unspoken questions and buried memories. Ezekiel took a step forward, his eyes fixed on hers. "You know," he said in a low voice, "when I was told that a young woman found my wallet, filled with dollars, and returned it without taking a single note, I was in disbelief." Sandra remained silent, eyes still locked on his. "I had prepared a generous reward for you," Ezekiel continued. "I waited for your call. But now, seeing you here under this scorching sun, carrying blocks, doing the kind of labor most men avoid, yet still knowing you returned that wallet untouched." He paused, shaking his head slowly in amazement. "It makes me respect you even more." Then, in a calm but resolute tone, he said, "Right now, I want you to drop that block and come with me." Sandra's grip on the block tightened. She stared at him, torn between hesitation and hope, unsure what he had in mind. The silence between them felt electric. Could this be the turning point? Now that Ezekiel has witnessed her true hardship, what choice will he make next? Could this very moment mark the beginning of something far more powerful than either of them expected? Stay tuned for the continuation of the story. Thank you so much for watching the story all the way to the end of part 1. If you love this story and you want me to continue it, please drop a comment below saying, "Continue the story." Also, Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and turn on the notification bell so you'll be the first to know once the next part is uploaded. Thank you once again for watching, and I can't wait to see you in the continuation.